I now call to order the August 25th, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting, the time being 6:30. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please take roll?
Trustee Blackstone.
Here.
Trustee Moore.
Present.
Trustee Barrett.
Here.
Trustee Moyer. Trustee Cannon.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Here.
Mayor Daley.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Are there any conflicts of interest to the agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a conflict and I will recuse myself during the Liquor License Authority Board.
I'll call for conflicts during that board as well. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Now it's the time for community participation. Members of the public who wish to comment on non-agenda items, please sign in on the sheet behind the podium and state your name clearly into the microphone. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide comments.
Okay, now my name is Richard Seaworth. I live at 4283 White Deer Lane. I've been yours and Larimer County's representative on the Box Elder Flood Authority for the last 4 years, I think. We are done with all the projects as of December 1. So we would expect to have it shut down as soon as possible. My bucket list is to get that thing sunsetted because it's been a bad deal off and on. Wellington didn't get all the houses out at 1 and 2. It was supposed to be a $13 million deal. This turned into a $26 million deal. So as soon as you can get it shut down, it would sure help. But we're right now, tomorrow we're going to have a budget meeting and we're budgeting 200 and some thousand to basically do nothing but just exist. That takes care of our attorney fees and our managers and our website and all that stuff that really doesn't do anything for the town. So I think the date we're trying to get to now is about January or July 1st of 27, and we can get this done. It'll save the fee payers of Wellington about $200 and some thousand a year. So I would hope that you would support that, make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just agree with what Richard said. There were a few differences, but the intent is that we need to get this thing closed. It's been a fight to get it to that point, and we need you guys to put the fire under everyone to make sure that we get it closed. Do you guys have any questions of the board that maybe you haven't been able to ask?
Not at this time, but could you, I know you, but will you please state your name for the record?
My name's Tim Singwald. I'm the Wellington representative on the Box Elder Board.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate your service on that board. Thank you, guys. Any other public comment this evening? You can sign in afterwards if you want, Leah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. I just wanted to use my public comment tonight to make sure the board and the community know that the concerns about FLOG have not gone away. Last week, we heard the sheriff's presentation, and I appreciate he came to Wellington. But hearing the presentation did not resolve the concerns many of us have about this technology. If anything, the more we learn about FLOG and ALPRs, the more questions there are about privacy, data sharing, oversight, retention, and how much surveillance we are willing to accept in our community. These cameras don't simply take a photo of license plates. They create searchable records of where vehicles were, when they were there, and what they looked like. LCSO's own policy says ALPR use does not require reasonable suspicion or probable cause, and stored data can include contextual photographs, location information, dates, and times. So I want to be very clear. Our opposition to FLOG has not changed. At the same time, we want this to be a fair and informed conversation. We are currently working with the League of Women Voters of Larimer County to find a date for another public meeting where we can present the civil liberties, privacy, legal, and other concerns surrounding flock. We're also trying to schedule that meeting at a time when Sheriff Fan can be present. We'll announce that date as soon as we have it. Until then, I simply ask this board to keep listening, keep asking questions, and please do not treat the existence of these cameras as a settled issue. It isn't. Thank you.
Thank you much. And Leah, did you state your name? I'm sorry.
Leah Kershaw.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? All right, we have two presentations this evening. The first one is from the NoCo Foundation, Housing's at a Crossroad. The presentation this evening will be by Brooke Cunningham, Regional Housing Officer. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share about the work that we're doing. That's my face. You don't need to see that. I want to start by just covering really briefly the NoCo Foundation. We are best known really for our philanthropic services. A lot of folks know us as a philanthropic bank or the philanthropic easy button. And we also provide really robust nonprofit support. So we are your community foundation. We serve Larimer County with those philanthropic services and nonprofit support. My work, and specifically the housing work, falls into that third bucket up there, the community engagement work. We recognize that we are kind of a really unique institution in that we live in this really beautiful neutral space, and we have the power to convene a lot of different people together, and that's our community engagement work. The housing work really started because of our 2024 Northern Colorado Intersections Report. That report looked at overall community well-being and all the factors that go into it. Probably unsurprising for many of you, housing really rose to the top, not only as the most critical infrastructure or intersection that impacts all of the others, but also as the one with the biggest need in our region. And when I say region, I'm really talking about Larimer and Weld County. So that really inspired us to take a look around and say, okay, as a community foundation, what role is there for us to play within housing? We're not going to become housing developers or anything like that, but we do think that there is a space to say, hey, we need some bigger picture strategy around housing, and we need to think about systems level change. And it turns out those are things that we're pretty good at. So we had some conversations with people who are already doing this work across the community, and we said, hey, is there a role for us to play here? If we engage in housing and we invest some time and resources in it, would that be helpful? And we really heard unequivocally yes. And so about a year ago, the NoCo Foundation hired me. Props to them. We love that. And so my job was created really specifically to lead this initiative. And when we're talking about housing and the things that get me most excited about housing is that housing really has a huge bang for your buck. By investing in and supporting housing and housing stability, you're also improving all of these other outcomes. Some of my favorite stories of working in housing for the last 8 years really have to do with kids doing better in schools, people getting higher education, people thriving in their jobs and getting promotions, whereas they were maybe on a PIP beforehand because they were so stressed because they didn't know where they were going to sleep that night. Housing really is the foundation for success, not only for individuals and households, but really for our community overall. So throughout our Housing at a Crossroads report, which I think you all got the link to, I also have copies of it. If anybody ever wants a copy, we ordered 2,500 of them, and I love to share them, so just let me know. But throughout the report, we really wanted this to be person-centered. It's really easy for us housing people to get lost in AMIs and unit counts and data and jargon, but really at the end of the day, it's making sure that people can afford to live here and can have the life that they want. And really, the big focus of that, and the reason that we're driving into this so hard, is because Larimer County has the highest mismatch out of all of the major counties in Colorado between what people make in their income and the average home price. We're the worst. And I think that that's really shocking to a lot of people. And Weld County is in the top 10 as well. So this is kind of our rallying cry to say, we've been saying it's getting bad, it's bad now. We really have to start making changes and acting like we have a housing crisis, because we do. So we commissioned this Housing at a Crossroads report, and out of this report came 5 key factors shaping housing. I'm going to go into the data pretty briefly because you have the reports and you can read about them. You're also more than welcome to email me if you have any questions or want to dive into the data together more, but really we're just going to do it at a pretty high level today. Key factor 1 is growth continues and is changing who we are. We know that growth has been a big story in Northern Colorado and then has shifted to maybe we're not growing as fast or maybe certain pockets are, but we still feel pretty confident that Northern Colorado will see growth. But really the other story is that our households are changing. Since 1980, we have decreased our household size by 6%. And that's a pretty significant change. Part of that is people are living longer and older adults living in a single family home. That changes things. People are also changing how they're growing their family, in part because of affordability. So we're just looking at a big increase in number of households who will need housing over the next 10 years. And we're not sitting on a lot of vacancy rates. So we're going to need to build more housing in Northern Colorado. We just talked about how the average household size is decreasing. At the same time and over the same period, the average home size has increased 41%. So we really treat this as a bit of a rallying cry to say, are we building the type of housing that we need? And how are we incentivizing builders to fill this gap? I think this one's pretty intuitive. If we don't have some of those smaller homes and really considered starter homes, we're really constraining the housing supply in a really challenging way. So people can't get into the housing market, and then we lock people into these large single-family homes. And I hear from people all the time, I would love to downsize. My kids I did the raising kids. I would love to downsize my house. I don't need 4 bedrooms anymore, but I can't afford to, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about because we have such a scarce supply of these both starter homes and I would say like homes appropriate for older adults. We are really creating a higher demand on those units, which cause upward prices. The third key factor is the affordability gap is widening. You can see here on this data, this is a graph. The purple line is what people can afford, and the green line on top is the median home price. So you can see that the gap has doubled over the last 10 years. I think this one's really obvious. The so what is that we're making it really challenging for people to live here and to stay and plan for the future. And we need to have a new approach for families and workforce and economic sustainability. Key factor number 4. This one's always the fun one. This is what I get told a lot throughout a lot of community conversations. It just costs more to build now. A lot of builders are saying we're getting told or treated like we are just greedy, but our returns are smaller and smaller every year because it costs so much more to build now. The data point here is in 2015, a single family home cost $300,000 to build. That same home would cost $450,000 to build. And that's not factoring in increases in land or water, which we all know are also a challenge. But I think the other really interesting story that we're trying to tell through this is really the cost of time. A lot of entitlement processes take a pretty significant amount of time, and that adds to the cost of housing. And it not only adds to the bottom line, which prices more buyers out, but we're also seeing the delayed opportunity for them to develop more houses or even our ability to collect taxes sooner. So this has a real ripple effect throughout the community. I think this is, if you've met with me ever, you've probably heard me say this, that the market is demanding affordability. So if it were as simple as supply and demand, the market would adjust itself because the demand is there for affordable housing. We just have a lot of barriers that exist that prevent us from meeting that need. And then finally, the 5th key factor is there's a lot of things that go into housing. It is a complicated and complex system. And I think it can be really daunting to look at that of all the things that can impact it and make it more challenging to build. I like to look at this and say, look at all the opportunity we have. Look at all the ways that if we can make a small difference in each of those little slices of that pie, we can make big differences in housing outcomes. And that's what I'm hoping to do. I think the big so what here is it's our job to now figure out how do we align all of those competing factors that we showed in that previous slide, and really aligning community priorities along the way. We anticipate the current needs just to catch up to the demand that exists across Larimer and Weld County now. We need an additional 6,400 units. But looking out over the next 10 years, we anticipate we'll need 47,500 units. That's a lot of housing units. We're going to have to get creative to meet this demand, and especially to meet this demand at the price points that people need it to be. Don't ask me where they're all going to go. I don't know. We'll figure that out together as we go. And I think the other really big question that comes with this is how much does it cost to actually meet that demand? We could build a lot of housing, but to build it at a price point that people need, it costs more money, or it can cost more money. So throughout our research, this was really the number that we wanted to get at, to say, okay, what is it actually going to take? So we've identified $1.8 billion annual cost over the next 10 years to meet this housing need. I think a lot of people assume, well, Proposition 123 exists, there's a lot of public funding, but you can see here that that's a really small slice of that $1.8 billion. A lot of private funding goes into housing, that's great, but we are still facing a $550 million gap. I think that's a lot of money that we have to figure out where that's going to come from, but we could also look at it as, how do we shrink that? How do we reduce the cost to build so that that number gets lower as well? So what are we doing about it? We have started the NoCo Housing Fund. We have $8 million in it so far. $5 million of it is from our charitable assets. As we started this regional housing initiative, we said, well, we better put our money where our mouth is and invest really locally. So we are creating a down payment assistance program and a revolving, it says commercial loan fund. We're working on rebranding it to be a development and preservation fund. And I will go briefly into both of those. Our down payment assistance is really trying to help local families access home ownership. We've heard pretty loud and clear when we started this work that one of the biggest challenges is the monthly cost. So we chose to use an equity share model, which really specifically doesn't increase the monthly payment. And instead that money is paid back either when the loan is paid off, when the buyers sell or refinance. And then they pay back that initial amount and a proportionate share of the equity gained. So for example, if they borrow 10% of the home's value and in 10 years they sell the home and they've gained $100,000 in equity, they pay back 10% of that $100,000 gained in equity, in addition to the original amount borrowed. That money then goes back into the fund and lets the next home buyer or the next family buy a house here. The revolving loan fund is really, the thing that gets me the most excited about this is we've kept it very flexible so that we can fund and incentivize different types of housing to meet our region's needs. A lot of funding that's available for affordable housing is can be very restrictive. And so we didn't want to box ourselves in and have this money that we can't loan out. So we built a really flexible fund to deliver low interest rate loans for housing projects, really targeting both true affordable housing, which by that we mean deed restricted, often tax credit funded housing, but also some of that kind of missing middle housing that can be for folks who make up to 120% of the area median income, because as our report has shown, there's a big gap there as well. And the really cool thing too is we can help support rental and for sale projects as well. The goal is for these funds, these initial loans to be on the smaller side. We're anticipating about $1 million and revolving fairly quickly so that we can help a lot of projects over the course of the next 10 years. So it's really fundamentally different than grant funding, which that money just goes out the door. It immensely helped that project, but it can't come back. Our money will come back and revolve and support many projects over time. Oh, that I could have waited to say that for this slide, but I didn't. So this is just showing how that money goes in, revolves, and has continuous investment into the community. The numbers that we've calculated with help with our partners at Impact Development Fund who are supporting us in this work is that if we can grow our fund to $20 million, over the next 20 years, we will have $220 million of housing investment in the community. So that's a really profound impact from that original $20 million investment. In addition to bringing capital to the table, the other part of my job is I do a lot of regional convening work. And really, this is trying to make systems level change across the region by bringing smart people who are working in housing every day to come to the same table and say, what are the levers that we can push and pull in each of these areas? So we are talking about how do we bring more capital to the table through that cash work group, really looking across the country to say who has faced similar problems and has solved it, and how do we learn from them? The cost work group is really trying to say, hey, this is a really complex issue. There's also sometimes a lot of mistrust between builders and municipalities. And so can we create a really trusted data set that can show the impacts of different policies and what the impacts that they have on the cost of housing? That then will also help us identify a lot of different areas of opportunity to reduce the cost of housing, we hope. And then regional strategies is really trying to take a big picture at how do we work together better across the region. We've created a municipal workshop series that allows staff from municipal governments across the whole region to come together and learn from each other, to say, hey, what's working in your community? Let's not keep it to ourselves. Let's really share and learn from each other. And that has been really successful so far. And then finally, public and political will. This is a really big topic that comes up in all of the other meetings as well, of how do we really change the narrative around affordable housing? Because that can be really harmful and problematic to this work. And then another initiative, as if I don't do enough through my job, is we have created housing literate leaders. Are you all familiar with water literate leaders? Seeing some nods. So we do that with the CSU Water Center. And as we started this work, we said, hey, housing is just as complicated as water. We could probably use some community learning about that. So we've created housing literate leaders, which is a 9-month cohort of professionals working in our community, and they will learn together, really dive into the housing system and how to make a difference and where to plug in to make that kind of systems level change. This is our first year offering it. It will start in September, but we anticipate offering it on an annual basis. And really, my final rallying cry is housing takes all of us. Fixing this situation that we've all gotten into will really take all of us. I call on you all to make great decisions. We also need people, business community members, housing stakeholders across the board to really engage in this work and really start to make a difference, because the way the system is right now, it's simply not working. And then I like to end on a positive note. I'm inherently an optimist, even though I work in housing. And really, this is my friend Larry Kendall. He founded the group Real Estate. And my favorite part of this quote is, the question isn't whether we're smart enough to maintain a vibrant, healthy, and affordable community. It's only a question of our will and commitment. But he thinks we can do it, and I agree with him. And that's my presentation, but I'm here to answer any questions you all have.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll start with Trustee Blackstone. He's the representative on the Wellington Housing Authority as well.
Yeah, I want to say thanks for that presentation.
Sure.
Seems like a great organization trying to do kind of like you said, some fairly hard work that can be a little emotionally tolling. Just like I wanted to reiterate one thing that you said, that housing, for me, not only does it affect the ability for folks in school or kids in schools, even young adults in schools, healthcare is another thing.
Yep.
Any aspect of like first responders, whether it's police or fire or anything, like having a stable home just helps every factor of our town and county and state. I was kind of just jotting down some notes because I think you kind of made me think of some really interesting things, talking about people not wanting to move out of their house, especially as interest rates are like rising. Makes me very concerned about somebody that may be in a house that's too big now, but like, are they going to step into something at 7% interest?
Right.
Anyway, but I think you really hit on the head about getting creative about this. I think our town, with the land use code stuff, the Prop 123 commitment, fee rebates, these are things that we are trying to do as a board. But it's just difficult. There's only like kind of, I feel like so much we can do. The down payment program that you kind of talked about, I think is very interesting. The couple things that I was just curious, and if you could kind of speak to our ability as a board, is what do you see as far as things that we can control that you would be like, hey, here's something you guys, I'm not seeing it yet, or something like that. If there's anything that you're like, hey, here's some easy pickings on something you could do, or even just a program we could be a part of that you guys are already talking about.
Yeah.
Anything you can speak to on that?
Well, I'll say that some of your staff are already engaged in the work that we're doing, so kudos already. I think whenever I talk to elected officials, I think my biggest thing that I wish they all walk away from knowing is if housing is as big of an issue in your community as we think it is, every decision has to have it in mind. Housing is no longer just it's in this bucket. It is really causing ripple effects throughout. So we can't treat individual policies on their own. We have to be keeping an eye to how they impact housing, because there are so many things that do go into building housing, and it's such a complex ecosystem. So that would be my first rallying cry, is to say, keep this housing need in mind as you're making other decisions in your community. And then, keep engaged with the work that is happening across the region. We're not the only ones who are doing this work, but we're trying to keep it really at this high level, strategic and regional level. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And I would say too, cities have such an interesting part of housing because you all don't build housing, and yet there's a lot of things that you all can control. I think that time process is always one of the things that I hear the most from builders. Is it takes a long time to get through the process, and every community is different, and that can create challenges. I think if you asked me to dream big of in 5 years or 10 years even, what could we do? I could see a vision where a lot of communities up here have the same code, and then builders don't have to redesign their projects across the board. And we could get a lot of economies of scale to say, oh, we've already approved it in Sterling. I was just thinking of our communities in northeastern Colorado, but I've already approved this in Loveland. It fits all the code. It could go through the process much faster here because you all have the same code. That I know would take a lot of work. I know I've maybe made some people in the audience sweat a little bit, but again, if we just dream big about what's possible, and some communities have figured this out too.
Yeah, no, just in case people listening or attending aren't sure about whether Wellington has a housing shortage, some of the notes I wrote down from our housing needs assessment that we had done, we have a need for about 139 units where that AMI is less than 50%, and currently we have 0.
Yeah.
And when that study was done, I believe there was 19 rentals available in Wellington, and none of them were below like 1,700 or so. So we have just so folks are on the same page about what people are dealing with right now. I think that's great. I think, continued conversation. I know you've talked with the Housing Catalyst that manages our housing authority. If there's, anything that comes up, especially when it comes to any sort of funding pools or things like that, because at the end of the day,
absolutely,
that's how houses are built as well. That we just keep in contact, and you let us know kind of what we can do and what you guys have ideas of. I would appreciate it.
I maybe neglected to say this, that as we're starting these revolving loan funds, we are always looking for additional partners to join us. The Well Trust has committed $1 million into the fund, and we had an independent individual who invested $1 million into it as well. We are having conversations with a lot of philanthropic organizations to invest in it as well, but we are really inspired by the work of the Community Foundation in Austin, who has done the same work, and their fund got kickstarted by a commitment from the city of Austin with a $5 million loan with no interest over 30 years, which is, I know, crazy, but that's what really started that work. So we've seen examples of investments of cities really investing into their community, and we have the ability to do that as well.
I hope we just have continued conversation like with our housing authority or any of our groups, Habitat for Humanity.
Or if you have $5 million laying around that you want to,
we'll ask around.
I can do it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I want the record to show that Trustee Moyer is now online, if she can be elevated. Is she ready? Not quite yet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Trustee Moyer, you are our presenter. You should be able to unmute yourself when the mayor calls on you.
Yes, please. Trustee Moyer.
Hi, I am currently coming to you from California. I'm here doing some domestic disaster recovery. My position is with Habitat for Humanity International. And so this presentation for me is not news, but I do feel like I have a few questions here. I worked for a affiliate in Greeley World Habitat for Humanity for 7.5 years. Impact Development Fund and Well Trust were very valued partners of ours. And so I'm curious here how the decisions are made on the loan amounts. If you partner so closely with Impact Development Fund, where is the decision making? And then I can stop there if you'd like to touch on that one first.
Sure, happy to. We are going to do our initial round of loans. The pre-application will be available October 1st. And so we have created a loan committee that it has somebody from the Well Trust, somebody from Impact Development Fund, and members of our board and staff voting on it. So it will happen really with this small but mighty loan committee.
Okay. And then can you tell me how your down payment assistance program differs from what CHAFA offers and if the two can be stacked?
Yes. First and foremost, our down payment can absolutely be stacked with others. We can offer up to 15% of the home's value, but we do ask borrowers to bring 5%, which is where we've seen so far some partnership with CHAFA programs or other existing down payment assistance that maybe don't have as high of a limit as ours. So they can get 5% somewhere else and then borrow 15% from ours, getting them to that 20% down, which helps them avoid private mortgage insurance. Ours differs from a lot of CHAFA has so many programs, so I don't want to overspeak to say CHAFA's never offered anything like this or anything like that. I'm not overly familiar with all of their down payment assistance programs, but ours has a pretty high AMI limit. We can go up to 120% of the area median income, and we are using that equity share model so they don't start to pay it back until they sell the home or refinance it.
Okay, and so you say you can offer that up to 120 of the AMI. What's the lowest you go?
There is no lower limit.
So you would serve 5%.
If they can qualify for a loan, yeah.
Okay. So another question I have is when looking at the revolving fund, do you ever, after you said these get paid back if and when the homeowner sells, which is very similar to Habitat, but are these loans ever forgiven outright or?
No, there's no, sorry.
Sorry, no, that's okay. It's private funding, so I would assume there's no repayment term in terms of after a certain point, the funds do not have to be repaid. So you're always going to recover those funds.
That's correct. Yes, we are always wanting to recover the loans for the down payment assistance. That's correct. And the revolving development loans. Yes.
Right. Yes. That was the founding idea of Habitat for Humanity 50 years ago, which, as you said, we have to look outside the box to fix this problem now because that doesn't necessarily work in these times. But for me, I'd be curious what your metrics for success are. Is it like units that get funded, number of loans, number of homeowners that are placed? How will you measure success in the housing space?
That is such a good question and something that we're still really trying to figure out. In terms of the loan program, we are trying to avoid having just outright units be the overall goal because there might be a small project that really fills an important community need or has more services to it or is a really complex infill project that we feel like is a good project to fund, but might not be as significant of an impact as a $150 LIHTC project that's happening in Greeley. And so we're trying to figure out how to measure success that isn't just relying on unit counts. It's something we will track and celebrate as we go, but we don't want that to be the overriding factor and the only factor that we consider because then we're only funding the really big projects, which doesn't necessarily align with our priorities and community priorities. So we want to maintain that flexibility to be adaptable and meet community needs where they are.
Sure. I'm also familiar with that concept. I don't necessarily think that if you use those metrics, you can't fund an infill project. I think it's just important to know the accountability piece in terms of if you're going to have $8 million, how much of that is invested, how much of that is restricted, and how many dollars have gone to Larimer County, how many go to Weld County, and what is the overall impact of those funds. I'm curious, and this is kind of, I'll let this be my last one. Yep. If Wellington is to partner, what is the anticipated outcome for Wellington in terms of growth of our affordable housing?
Yeah, I think the conversations that we're having with potential partners really drills into that to say, what is your goal with this funding, and is this fund the right source for that? So far, the conversations we've had have been pretty positive, and we've had some successes with that. And I do think the accountability piece is really important to us. As such, funders, partners in the fund will have a seat on the loan committee as well, which I didn't say when I talked about the loan committee, but it's an important part. So we can always have that representation to ensure that the loans are having the impact that they want. And I think we can be, the really cool thing about this work, to be quite frank with you, is we can come to the table and say, well, what are your priorities? Can we partner together? This fund is so new and so flexible that we might be able to sit down at a table to say, hey, Wellington, if you invest, your money can be restricted to Wellington. What are the outcomes you want to achieve with it? And we're absolutely in lockstep with you and in partnership with you, unless your priorities are, we want really big houses on really big lots. And then we might say, okay, we're not the right fit for you. But overall, this is such new work for us. And I don't want this to sound like we won't have accountability, because we will, and we will report out widely on the impacts that we're having, but we just don't have some of those pieces figured out yet.
Thank you so much. Trustee Cannon.
Ms. Cunningham, thank you for your presentation
My
there.
pleasure.
I was intrigued by the housing literate leaders course. I was in the second cohort of your water literate leaders course, and it laid a pretty good foundation from my understanding of Colorado water law. So is that class already booked out?
It is, yes. We have 26, we had 36 applicants, and we've accepted 26 for this year. We anticipate spring of next year we'll have the next application cycle.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Trustee Barrett.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I see that we have kind of a good setup for people who are trying to enter the housing market and be first-time homeowners. I also see that with the revolving commercial loan fund, that might, help target more people who are not in the position to become homeowners for rentals. But I do only see the commercial side of that. Are there any ways that we can approach it more directly to the renters? I know we need to in the first place, have rental units available, which is what we're lacking.
Yeah.
But it is just like, it's kind of that hurdle for people. Is your goal to just make more people eligible for homeownership? Because I mean, there are other varying factors that make them not eligible, as like, just personal debt, which is rising, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
But is there a way we can target making just more rental?
Yes. And that's why we're working on rebranding that commercial loan. That's not really the right term for it. We are really trying to call it the Development and Preservation Fund, revolving loan fund. So that can be used for either rental or for sale products. So that can be used to invest in a rental product here in Wellington that stays rental, built for rental, stays rental.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Trustee Moore.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. I really also very much appreciate everybody else's comments. I feel like you guys know more than I do. I'm really excited to kind of continue conversations and just kind of learn a little bit more about what this could look like, because I do foresee that, the housing is limited and is, it's not a problem that's going to go anywhere. It's not going to go away. Excuse me. I'm also a little sick. it's not going to go away. So I think the more options that we have and the more informed we are about all available choices and options, the better. So I don't currently have any questions, but thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I'll just say that the really cool thing about the work that I get to do is we're not here to prescribe any one solution. And we're not here to come in and say, hey, Wellington, this is what you've got to do to fix housing. It really is a collaborative community effort to say what is needed where and how do we make ourselves more resilient to responding to those needs.
Mayor Protem.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I also don't have any questions for you tonight, Ms. Cunningham, but really appreciate the presentation, and apologies to everybody if I sound a little nasally. I'm also just getting over a cold. So, but thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. I'll wash my hands well when I leave.
I really appreciate you coming. A lot of what you presented on is similar to what we've discovered also through our housing studies. So I do appreciate that. The slide that spoke most to me that I think that the community struggles with is the slide that says meet your neighbors. When we talk about our big gains in affordable housing and what our town is doing to aggressively pursue affordable housing, it comes with negative connotation, and that hurts my heart because the examples that were provided here are exactly the examples that we have in mind. So the ones that were listed were a dual income house with an office manager and a barista, another dual income house, a firefighter and a nurse's aide, one person household of a high school teacher, a multi-generational family of 6 people in their household, and then a single retiree fixed income person who is in Larimer would be 27% AMI. So those are the people that we're talking about when we're saying we need more housing to accommodate these folks. And those are people that we rely on to be safe, who take care of our children and take care of us when we're sick. And our grandparents or part of our extended family. So that is who we're talking about. We're talking about our friends and family and people who are essential and a big part of our community. So I appreciated you including that. Otherwise, it sounds like a fantastic program. I also had the question about CHAFA. You already acknowledged that one. This is my concern. So I'm just gonna, we appreciate what you're doing very much, but this is what happens. If there's a county initiative or state initiative with all the best intention, Wellington doesn't see those dollars. Wellington doesn't see those facilities. Wellington doesn't see those homes. And the way it was presented is not how I'm interpreting it this way is you have to pay to play. And if I know that's not how you meant it, but if we were to put our own money in the basket, then potentially we could reserve that for people who live in Wellington. Otherwise, it's at the stake of those invested to determine where those dollars go. So as much as I don't, pay to play is a hard way to say it, but that is the situation in which we are in. So communities like Wellington who don't necessarily have an extended amount of money to dedicate to a fund for affordable housing, we're doing the things that we can do within our capabilities to encourage it. But a lot of times these kind of instances don't benefit us. And I would really hate for that to be the case because it sounds like a wonderful program. So please don't forget Wellington.
Thank you.
And I guess it's individual people or developers who would need to reach out to you directly in order to qualify for these things. When you say preservation, does that also mean rehab of existing rentals?
That's correct. Or acquisition. If we want to, if there's an apartment complex or a duplex that's going up for sale and we have a nonprofit or somebody who wants to buy it and deed restricted, those are things that can qualify for this type of funding.
How about a single family home or any kind of unit that would then be turned into a duplex or a quadplex or something like that? Would that be applicable?
Yeah, there's definitely potential for that. Absolutely.
In organizations like the Wellington Housing Authority, that's something that they've been looking into very, very strongly to try to do. Okay. So I was curious if that would also be projects that would be eligible. So that's wonderful news. So I hate to leave it on a sad note. It's my job to take care of the town of Wellington amongst all the rest of this board. So don't miss Wellington.
I hear you loud and clear. And I will say that I added that note because in conversations with municipalities in the past, they say, well, it's taxpayer money. You can't spend it outside of our town or our city. And so I just wanted to address that we do have mechanisms in place that if you did invest in it, we can geographically restrict that funding to here.
Okay.
It is not intended to be pay to play at all. And I know you hear me when I shook my head like, no, that's not what I mean. But really, we have $4 million of very flexible money. 3 of it is coming from the NoCo Foundation. 1 is coming from that individual investor that has no geographic restrictions on it whatsoever.
Okay.
And as the foundation, we have been invested in from people in the community. These are largely coming from donor advised funds that are invested in the balance pool. And we're saying, hey, let's invest it locally here. And Wellington is absolutely included in that footprint of what we consider local. So we just need the right project to come to the table, and it will absolutely be considered and at the top of the list for sure.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you being in here.
Thank you. Okay.
We have one more presentation this evening, and that's from Xcel Energy regarding public safety power shutoffs and wildfire mitigation. Our presenter is going to be Hans Rodvik, and he's the area manager for the Community Relations and Local Government Affairs. Hey,
Thank you,
Hans.
Mayor. It's good to see everybody. Some new faces and some old faces. Appreciate you guys having me here tonight. So we're going to kind of run through a brief presentation that I gave back in the spring after we had the PSPS events. Wanted to update some of the newer board members about what we're doing as it relates to wildfire mitigation, how we're enhancing the system across the region and here specifically in Wellington. Do I use the clicker? Let's see. Okay. So wildfire risk, it's a rapidly evolving and I think growing situation here in Colorado, as obviously we experienced one of the driest winters here on record. This risk is really kind of a threat at all times of the year. Thankfully, we've gotten some rain here over the last few weeks, and I really hope it continues all the way until next summer. And so as part of that, Xcel is doing our part to try to identify the areas that are the highest risk for us where we have our assets. Primarily, we're talking about our electrical assets, which means the transmission lines, the big tall ones, and then your standard distribution lines, which send power to your homes and businesses around the state. So we have broken the state up into 3 different tiers. The first being the yellow tier, which covers most of northern Colorado. Tier 2 and tier 3 are the orange and red. As you look up into the Wellington area, Wellington's right on the edge there, so you're within tier 2. Tier 2 is kind of where we're going to start seeing some different operational mechanisms go into place as we work to protect the communities that we serve. So as a publicly regulated utility, we do a lot of plans and we file a lot of plans before the Colorado Public Utilities Commission. So in 2024, we filed what was called our 25 through 27 Wildfire Mitigation Program. It was roughly $2.1 billion when we initially filed it and settled on about a $1.9 billion approval to target a lot of improvements across our system. The vast majority of those dollars, as you can see, about 83% are going directly back into actually fixing the system and making it safer. So tremendous amount of pole replacements. We're replacing assets before their end of life and trying to do a lot of mitigation efforts on the vegetation management side of things, which means clearing paths along our power lines and our transmission lines to keep debris and tree off of those to prevent any sort of wildfire starting there. The rest of the money is really going into operations and hiring staff to execute a lot of this work. As you'll see, there's some information there. We work with Larimer County to place some cameras around the area, not the flock cameras, but they're called Pano AI, and they work to help us detect wildfires before they spread too seriously. So we actually have test cases of these working down in the Boulder County area where the camera detected it, sent an alert to the emergency responders, and they had the fire mopped up within about an hour. And so we're really proud of a lot of that work that's happened here over the last couple of years, and we expect to kick off our 28 through 31 plan next year. So kind of this helps just break down kind of the main buckets. We've got the advanced technologies. We're expanding our team from our public safety and community engagement outreach. So we have a team of folks that work primarily with our emergency management officials and do a lot of community events kind of in the wildfire space. And how do we work with those first responders who are boots on the ground when things do go south? And so I'm a big visual learner, and so I think this slide helps us kind of understand the various tools and things that we have in our tool belt to reduce wildfire risk. And I will say we're not the only utility looking at this. There are a lot of others around the state, tri-state, and some of the other big guys are also looking at this and how do they reduce their risk. But as the state's biggest utility, we kind of took we were the first ones really to lean in hard on this. And so we have targeted undergrounding, which I kind of want to share some exciting updates on for the community that'll hopefully reduce those PSPS impacts and enhance reliability up here. And so again, another visual, this kind of highlights the entire kind of system, right? So we've got system hardening, which is pole replacements, putting covers on those bare wires. We're putting a lot of devices basically to keep birds and animals off of the power lines. We've got our community outreach and some unique programs that we've stood up to help lower income residents and folks who are vulnerable and may need a medical device in their home. I want to make a plug for our PSPS battery rebate program. If you go online, type that in. I'll certainly share the link with you guys, but it is qualified. If you are a resident in an area that's tier 2 or tier 3 risk zone, so that would be Wellington, you can, and if you have a medical device in your home, so a CPAP machine or an oxygen machine, you can apply and get a $10,000 grant from us to install a battery system that'll keep your house on when the power goes out. So I just want to make a plug for that. It is very underutilized right now. So when we think about, community resources and funding, we just need to get the word out and tell residents in Wellington who meet those qualifications to apply and get after it. So again, talking a little bit about the work. I don't have the exact figures for 2025 quite yet, but I imagine these numbers are going to be substantially higher. So many poles have been replaced. A lot of inspections. We're now using drone technology to help us get better visuals on some of those harder to reach poles and pieces of equipment. And then again, really trying to identify any of those pieces of equipment that we can replace ahead of life or before they fail and cause an outage. And one of the other big things to note is that in 2025, or by the end of this year, we'll have completed vegetation management on all of our tier 2 feeders, tier 2 and tier 3. So Wellington is fed by a substation of ours that's a few miles south and just to the east of I-25. And those 2 feeders were cleared and had vegetation management taking place over the course of this last year. So we're going to talk about kind of the 2 tools that have caused some headaches and caused some issues and just help folks understand them. And then we can talk about the storm that took place back in January and how that PSPS event went down. So enhanced power line safety settings, EPSS, we go into these settings when we're in hotter, drier days, generally think like a red flag day. And basically it makes the lines more sensitive to any disturbances, and they will de-energize on basically once they notice a fault. That means if a bird flies into it or a tree branch touches it, it's going to de-energize that line versus when we're not in these settings, they generally will trip 3 times before turning off. And so we do this to help reduce that risk of causing a wildfire on some of those hotter, drier days. The downside to these is that outages happen more frequently, and we have to send crews out manually to patrol the lines before we turn it back on. So when we EPSS is kind of the first tool, and then a PSPS is really a tool of last resort. And I think one way to frame this is that, when we do a proactive power shutoff, we as Xcel are responding to a very severe weather event, right? This is not us just wanting to be vindictive to our customers and our communities. This is us preparing for something that could be a hurricane force wind event. which is what we saw in December. January wasn't as extreme, but it was still very extreme, as I'll note here in a couple of slides. And so, we're one entity that is responding to this, right? There are a lot of other entities that have to respond to these type of events. But obviously we take a lot of the scorn when power goes off during these type of events. And we're trying to do everything, all that work that I talked about earlier is really helping to minimize the instances of these events. So again, just kind of understanding the delineation of the two settings. One is settings that you generally will not notice. The other will, there'll be a ton of communication from Xcel, and generally you guys will hear from me at least 48 hours in advance of one of these events. So, like I said, the red flag warnings, PSPS is obviously going to be the extreme case, right, where you've got incredibly low humidity, very, very dry fuels and trees and grass, and extremely high winds, right, generally north of 65 miles an hour. And so I talked about getting notice from me at least 48 hours in advance. So when we start contemplating a public safety power shutoff, we're actually required by our regulators and what we wrote into our own plans to begin talking to folks 72 hours in advance. So offices of emergency management or fire departments, depending on the size of a community, right? If you have an emergency liaison, they're going to get noticed at least 72 hours prior. So we've got a bunch of meteorologists watching the weather 24/7, and they're normally seeing things a week out. And we start activating and kind of standing up the team around that 72-hour mark. So we'll start communicating that, hey, there's weather forecasted. We could be looking at turning off power on X date for X period of time. In that 72 to 48 hours, that's when I'll be reaching out to the towns, to the board, to staff, and everything like that. And then we really start pushing hard the public messaging at the 48-hour mark. So emails and phone calls and texts, automated messages. We have a dedicated website specific to public safety power shutoff events. I mean, a ton of social media posts, and then obviously the news media is going to be covering it as well. So we lead up to it. We're constantly refining kind of the area that's going to be impacted leading up to the event. So that does cause some challenges as folks experience probably in December and January, right? Are you in the event? Are you out of the event? Am I getting a text? And why am I getting a text? So some confusion, right? And we're utilizing tools and trying to find the best technology to make sure when a customer is going to be in, they get the right notification at the right time. And if they get removed from the scope, that they're getting that clear information as well. So then the event happens, power turns off, and then we have to wait until weather conditions die down for the guys to start checking all the lines and energizing it again. That's kind of the process. Then obviously restoration, like we saw in December, kind of down in the foothills south of Boulder area, right? Some very remote mountainous terrain where it took 4 or 5 days to get power back because of how damaged some of that equipment was. Thankfully, in January, we got power back on to everybody who was impacted originally by the PSPS event that same day. So we didn't have as severe of a storm as the December one. So January, kind of a long time ago. I was just coming off of paternity leave, so it was kind of a blur. But I do remember that day very vividly. So we originally had Wellington, all of Wellington being impacted. Thankfully, our team was able to kind of redo some things and switch where Wellington was going to be fed from to keep you guys out of the event. So if I recall, it was supposed to take place at about 8 a.m. Power was supposed to go off. So it went off to those roughly 9,000 customers, and Wellington stayed on until about noon when the wind picked up and it started blowing. And so these are little screenshots and snippets from our meteorology team. And those stations we put little weather stations on some of our poles around the area to get real-time information. And it showed kind of what we were seeing throughout the course of the day. So it continually picked up over the course of the day, right? You can see just north of Wellington by 10 a.m. was, 65-mile-an-hour gusts. And it just got worse and worse and a lot worse. Finally, by the end of the day, we were starting to see things calm back down a little bit. And I don't exactly remember the time. I'm sure if we look back in the emails from when I was communicating, I think we had everybody back on maybe around 8 or 9 p.m. that night. And Wellington, Loveland, the conditions improved. So where we were able to energize them first, but then Wellington was second. And during that event, we had staged about 100 plus crews up here. So that was about 400 linemen and contractors based around the area to help take care of outages as they were happening throughout the day, and then to get as many people examining the lines once the conditions were in a place where they could restore power. One of the things we get a lot of questions about is, hey, winds aren't as bad. What's going on? When can restoration start taking place? We kind of have a threshold. If we're seeing winds in that 40-mile-an-hour range or greater, we can't send the guys up in the bucket trucks to make any sort of repairs. And so it's kind of a fine line until we're able to reach a safe point for them to be up in the air, repairing the lines, putting new wire back up to get things restored for everybody. So these last couple of slides just kind of talk about what type of damage we experienced on the system. They're not that exciting. We experienced a pretty good amount of damage, had some very expensive equipment get blown down over south of I-25 that we had to repair a couple of weeks later. So kind of after action, and then what has happened really since January to now, I think is we've seen some huge improvements. Our public-facing outage map got a total revamp. So if you haven't checked that out, you can check it out. It's a little bit more dialed in, and it shows people if you're in a planned outage, what the outage is. We're highly encouraging people to ensure that they give us the correct contact information. Make sure you log into your Xcel Energy account or give us a call to update us with the correct phone numbers and emails so that when outages take place and emergencies happen, we're getting them to the right phone number and not a landline that, hasn't been picked up in 10 years. So outage map, big time improvements. We're trying to take advantage of is the cutting edge technology as we can to ensure that communications go out in a timely manner. And then I would say the biggest amount of work that has taken place between now and then is really boots on the ground work. We have spent a ton of money and placed devices across our system that will make it a lot more. I would say we will reduce the ability or reduce the risk of us having to turn power off at a very specific time, even if the wind conditions are not where they're supposed to be. So what I mean is there's technology that is allowing us to see real-time information in the field. And if conditions don't hit those critical wind speeds and the humidity indexes, we're going to keep power on. I think I shared a story about what took place kind of in the San Luis Valley in April when we were at CML. And we had a wind event forecasted, big wind speeds, low humidity, very, very dry. And the plan was to turn power off kind of around 10 in the morning. But thankfully, with the investments we've made and putting those devices out in the field, we're able to sit and watch. And instead of having to proactively turn everything off, we kept power on. It was disruptive, right, to schools because they still had to plan and they canceled school for the day because they didn't know what was going to happen. But for the 20,000+ customers that were planned to be impacted, power stayed on, which is a benefit. So I think a lot of that work is bearing fruit. And then I think the biggest thing I want to share with you guys is I just got confirmation, and we'll have a formal response here soon to the letter that the mayor and Patty sent over, is we're going to be undergrounding as part of our 2025 through 27 mitigation plan, one of the feeders that brings power to Wellington all the way from our substation. So it's about a 5-mile project. And we've committed to 50 miles of targeted undergrounding through that plan through the end of 2027. And I'm pushing very hard to get as much money dedicated to Wellington and Northern Colorado as possible, because we were the ones who had the most impact during all those PSPS events this last year. So super exciting news. Getting a targeted undergrounding project underway is a big deal. We're going to be working on basically the corridor coming up I-25. We have a feeder on the west side of I-25, and we're going to get rocking and rolling that here as we speak. They're already working on the designs and trying to engineer it and get it rolling. So I imagine you'll start seeing Xcel contractors running around and trying to get that cleaned up and done before the winter season and wind events happen next year. So with that, happy to take any questions you guys have. I know I rambled on for a long time, but here to answer any questions you have about PSPS events and Wildfire or anything else happening in Xcel's world.
Thanks so much, Hans. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rodvik, great to see you again, and really appreciate the presentation tonight. I won't inundate you with a bunch of questions I asked regarding this last January regarding restoration timelines and the like, considering that we had met with you in
June.
What? Yeah. Well, June at CML, but I was going to say in February, I think it was, with the prior board, and we had kind of gone over this kind of the same presentation. So I did want to highlight for our residents tonight that really kind of the purpose of this presentation is to get the new board up to speed on what EPSS and PSPS events are and that sort of thing. I'm sure you remember my phone call to you on January 16th. I apologize for that, but yeah.
Never apologize.
But anyway, all that being the case, and I know obviously our residents, I think, remember those events pretty vividly. But I just want to say I really appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. I know that since we met in June at Colorado Municipal League, that we had discussed getting some of those feeder lines undergrounded. And it sounds like you've made some progress on that, and specifically those 5 miles that you just mentioned. So I'm excited about that, and I hope you guys are able to get that going. Obviously, that's something we've really tried to push for, and but it does sound like you guys are making a lot of progress. So I really appreciate the partnership on that, and just thank you very much. So,
welcome. You're welcome, Mr. Mason. I will say real fast, you guys have a great mayor, and for the residents out there, your board is highly engaged, and we appreciate when our communities are partners with us, right? And we are here. I've told everybody this, I think, many times, is that my job is really to help be your best advocate to the company. And so, we're going to try to get as many of these projects going as possible. The second feeder, trying to push to get that one potentially in the next wildfire mitigation plan and that targeted undergrounding program as well. So, doing our best to take care of you guys and make sure the system is safe and reliable, and we, really de-escalate the need for any of these events up here.
Awesome. We'll go to Trustee Moyer, please.
Hello, Hans. Thank you for your presentation.
Hello.
Hi. So if anyone out there in the audience or watching online does not know what I do in my day job, I am a manager of a domestic disaster recovery program. And so I'm currently in Pasadena/Altadena, California, helping to build back and recover the Altadena community after losing over 6,000 units of single family homes due to wildfire. A couple of our other locations are Lahaina, which was also due to wildfire, community decimated there, and then also Paradise, California. And the one thing, unfortunately, that I have to say that they all share is the cause of the fire was down power lines. And so to just say, and I've said this before, I think I said this the last time this was presented, as much as a power outage is an inconvenience, I do work from home. So when my internet doesn't work and my computer doesn't turn on, and especially now with the air conditioning not working, all of those things are an inconvenience, but it is so much better than losing your home or losing your family member or a pet. And I've seen all of that here, and I've spoken to those people. And so I appreciate the mitigation efforts, and I am especially excited about the undergrounding of the lines because that's one thing that these communities did not have in common. And that's so important, especially with our wind. And so, as much as we can be a support to you in the efforts, please let us know. And then also, thank you again and continue to be an advocate for us because what you're doing is really important in preserving this community that has been here so long and that we all love so much. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Barrett.
Thank you so much, hon. Really appreciate you coming out here. As we all know, last year was significant with these wind events. We had 3 major outages. I believe 2 of them, we were without power in a lot of areas for up to almost 10 hours. It's basically unprecedented in our region. So, but I think we can anticipate more weather events. And so I really appreciate that we are being proactive on this. It's maybe half reactive, obviously, but you know, we're playing a little bit of catch up. But I really, really love that we're getting those lines underground. That is a big deal. Has there been talk about a new substation, and would that help like make power outages affect less people?
It's a great question. We did have a meeting here last couple of weeks with some of the town staff. Kind of 2 points there. We're currently, I would say, evaluating the need for a second substation up here in this kind of growing region around Wellington. Very preliminary planning stages, and so we're kind of gathering some initial feedback just from the community and the elected officials of like, where would it potentially make sense? What are the community's general thoughts on something like this? There's a lot that's going to go into it if and when the location gets identified and how we're going to do it. But yes, having a second substation that is closer to town would certainly help because we would probably be able to feed various parts of town from those closer lines. And ideally, we would build them underground. Right now, that substation that feeds Wellington is about 7 to 7.5 miles away. The feeder on the west side of I-25, like I said, it's about 4 miles until we connect to existing underground. And then the one on the east side is a true close to 7 miles all the way up. And so that's a pretty far run for substations and where power is coming from. And so we want to work with you guys and be partners and transparent and have as many conversations as we can to learn about where would be a good spot and then how it would benefit obviously the community.
That's very exciting. I really appreciate that because with all the work you're doing, it's tackling a lot of issues, but we are still going to have to keep our eye on the long road ahead, of course. Let's see. Do you have kind of a goal time that in mind that you want to have for service calls response? I did recently see some online talk about putting in a service call, and it took a really long time. People have anxiety about another fire starting.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, because you are working on getting more teams out on the grounds and stuff, is there like a specific goal time that you want to achieve?
I would need to follow back up with our operations team to figure out what kind of our expectations are to respond to calls for service for outages. So let me put that one on the shelf and I'll circle back to you. Okay.
Now, I know with the January wind event, you were talking about kind of the biggest thing that caused the outage to last so long was that you had to wait till the weather reached a certain threshold before you could actually start addressing it.
Yep.
It was still seemed like a bit longer. If I recall, it was actually like 10 o'clock on that day when actual power was restored. And most people were getting their power back with similar weather, still kind of like, hours before that, actually. I'm just trying to gauge, like, is it possible that it still could have been if we had, more resources or something like that? Would it have been feasible that we actually could have had our power restored faster?
That's a good question. I would have to go back and kind of do some more, I guess, deep dive with the guys from our control center and learn a little bit more about
That 5
how it
o'clock
went.
time slot, sorry to interrupt, sorry. Specifically that 5 o'clock time slot, we didn't have any stats for our region there. I wasn't able to find anything online because I actually don't know where those stats come from.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would be able to maybe see if there was any follow-up on finding out what our status was at that 5 o'clock time, and that just might give a little more insight, honestly.
I think if I recall, and this is a stretch, so don't hold me to it, but I think what occurred was because we had originally switched most of the community to other feeders, to other power sources, it took more time to then re-switch that back from a manual perspective versus had we originally turned you guys off on the 2 existing feeders. I think that potentially could have caused, requiring going to a substation, making those manual adjustments in addition to the actual patrolling of many miles of power lines overhead and in the dark.
Excellent. But
If you don't mind, if I may, if I recall correctly, during our February meeting, part of the issue was that because we had been taken off the PSPS plan, that when the power did in fact go out, that some of those lines ended up being de-energized due to the EPSS, and because of that, we had to have trucks come up here and physically go through all of those lines before they could be re-energized. So because of that, it took us a significantly longer period of time to be restored.
Yeah.
got it.
And
Okay.
that's a good point, Mayor Pro Tem. So when I say, roughly 7 miles to the substation, that's as the crow flies. There's probably 20 to 40 miles of lines that spread out, not only straight to Wellington, but also the surrounding kind of peripheral areas in the unincorporated county that we also had to patrol. So pretty extensive amount of lines on both sides of the interstate.
To just add to that as well, obviously there's a number of lines that are downtown Wellington that are not undergrounded as well. And I know just from me driving around that night that there were a number of branches and things that Xcel was actually having to remove off of those lines and able to get them back into service. So
Our older town is definitely a difficult challenge to tackle. I really appreciate all these efforts, though. I would hate more than anything to see anyone lose their business, their home, because we weren't being proactive about it. So, and I know this is where we're figuring it out as we go. Like I said, this last year was unprecedented with the wind events. So I really appreciate all the work you're putting into this. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. I do want to say just one thing too on the wildfire mitigation plan, all this work that were taking place, right? We talk about $2 billion worth of investment roughly. One of the things that I think is important for customers, residents to understand is we are actually not earning any return on that. We've basically financed that through a way that we're not earning a return on it. So it's being financed over a long period of time through some very unique financial tools. And so that's not something that we're earning a profit on. Just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Trustee Cannon.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm not sure if I was here for that presentation you had earlier to the board in the springtime there. But I do remember the event, and also remember there was several events in the succeeding days and weeks and so forth like that where power was off and on. It's always inconvenient, but when you live as long as I do, you understand those things kind of happen. The one thing that I'm concerned with is our downtown businesses and our businesses in general. There was a power outage and during that time period, and I drove into town, and of course every gas station, every restaurant, every business along Main Street and so forth like that. And it's tough for our businesses. Some of these smaller businesses, these mom and pops, struggling to make ends meet, and to lose a day can be pretty devastating to them. So I appreciate what went well and where you can improve. And I would also encourage maybe to think about how to make the system a little more robust here in town. Thank you.
Understood.
Trustee Blackstone.
Thanks, Mr. Rodvik. I got to see that presentation, but I don't think I was quite on the board at that point. I wanted to touch on a few things and hopefully just kind of get some info from you. But just to be kind of what I heard about it specifically, that the issues that folks were having was specifically like non-account holders getting notified. So that could be something. Potentially the like restoration estimates being accurate and whatnot, and then folks not knowing how to prepare, like as far as what is best.
Sure.
I think taking those three things along with that $10,000 grant program for the batteries for our residents, what is that like site or like place that they could go to that could potentially, whether they're either putting out these kind of concerns or asking, looking for information for that grant, could like, do you just happen to know offhand what that is? So it's on the, can hear it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the first comment related to non-account holders or somebody who's potentially is a renter or something like that, I believe we have work to address that.
Cool.
I will double check with our team and send you guys the site and the link to that, to where basically, if you have an elderly resident or, a family member who lives in our territory and is going to be impacted by these and you want to get updates on it, you can sign up for that as well. So I'm pretty sure we have the tool available. I just don't have the site off the top of my head. We can go, I don't know how to go back on the slides. I was going to say my last slide talked about kind of building a home emergency kit. We have a team of kind of community resilience managers and a group who helps do outreach. If there are events, like if we, could come to a senior center or a community center and come and talk to folks and help, with that information and share like what's a good, number of, gallons of water to have on hand, or what type of like medications do you need to have on hand? Like make sure you charge your phones or your batteries. And obviously if you have a medical device, there's a process to register and let us know. That's a big one, is like, that's why I mentioned the proper account information. We really need people to tell us that they have a medical device in their home, because when they do that, they will get notices and information even more advanced. So I think that's generally a 3-day update. Leading up to the event, they'll get notified.
Okay.
But I'll make sure to follow up and send you guys the links to
Yeah,
those.
that'd be good. Maybe that's just something we could post, especially when you talk about 65 mile an hour and dry. Like, we're going to see that again. So
100%.
maybe that's just something we can also get better about, kind of pushing that. One thing I was just kind of curious about, that kind of thought of, as far as our like water and wastewater plants, like are those like critical customers, and like is there just communication with our staff as far as like if there was a multi-day PSPS kind of event? I just would like to make sure that we're ready for that sort of stuff, but that definitely falls more on our
Staff,
our town staff and whatnot, but figure we should touch on it.
Yeah, so we have we worked with the county to identify critical facilities and critical customers across the region. In our meeting a couple weeks ago, it actually was flagged that the wastewater treatment plant was not on that list, so we're going to get that tagged and make sure that it's obviously in the loop. When it comes to notifying staff or anything of that nature, Patty's got my cell phone and can call when anything happens. But like I said, at a minimum, we're at 48 hours advance notice. I'm generally more of this, inclination to say, hey, we're starting to look at this 72 hours out. Make sure the generator's ready. Make sure you guys have enough fuel. Make sure technicians aren't, sick or something like that. Make sure everybody's up and running.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it.
I can tell you, related to our critical infrastructure, if power goes out, we are notified. We have a group text chain for just supervisors, which, they let everybody know on the text string. I reach out to Hans immediately. He is very responsive. When I send him a text message, he responds quickly. Patty, can you give me the address? Tell me the exact location, what's happening. And then he goes with his team to figure things out and gets us updated. So we have a really great relationship with Xcel in that respect.
Cool. Just make sure people aren't worried about that again as we're going into the next year.
And I think one of the other things to note as well, some of the feedback we heard from various communities, right, is like, how do we get resources out to residents during one of these events? And so the process for us, so we have a big new partnership with American Red Cross, and they're kind of our boots on the ground when these events happen. They bring in their volunteers and obviously their paid staff to help us out. But the process is, it's a PSPS and it's, maybe very, very bad weather conditions, right? Maybe it's freezing cold or something, right? And we need to stand up a shelter. The process is for Larimer County, for basically, the town to request up to the county and then the county to request up to us and say, hey, we need a resource center stood up here. And so then we would bring, as many supplies as we could have, whether it's batteries, these events happen when it was very hot. So people need dry ice and, keep their food and stuff cold. So I would say that's the process. And the reason that is because the county does not want us standing up resource centers that they don't know about with, staff that they're not aware of and just causing, more confusion and potential issues in an emergency. So if you guys are looking for those type of things, I would work through Patty and then up through the county, and then they'll contact us and we'll get something out here.
That's awesome. My last thing is just the idea of the drones is very exciting. That's something that we use in the oil and gas when we're doing inspections on rig sites or on lines and stuff, because not only is it potentially faster, but you don't have to get people in a truck. And I think most accidents happen, it's people driving. I imagine it's the same everywhere else. Maybe with electricity, it's a little different, but yeah, it's a really cool technology. Would love to see that. Would love to know if that's something that's coming to Wellington. Would be very curious where that's at, because I've seen it, like I said, in my other job, and it's better, faster, like I said, than just neat technology. So cool that that's happening.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's one of the I think newer components of our response and evolution in this space. We've hired some guys who are ex-military, ex drone pilots, very skilled individuals, and they're using them to do monitoring and observation of very technically challenged transmission lines. I saw some pictures today that my colleague in the office was showing me. Yep, okay, we inspected a power pole in a location up here that was rotting out, so we're going to get it replaced. And the drone took the photos and did all the proper inspections on it and say, yep, that one's flagged, so we're going to get that replaced. So I would imagine that it could be happening around here. Hopefully people don't get too spooked if they see that, but if you guys get those calls or questions from residents, you can obviously reach out to me and we'll get the information out there.
Trustee Moore. Thank you for your presentation. I think I heard the last one, but I certainly wasn't up here yet. So it's really nice to have a refresher. I don't have a ton of questions. Primarily, I guess my question was, considering, and you kind of stole my question, but if we have cameras and drone technology to monitor areas and kind of facilitate that, early activation, is there a way to also utilize similar or the same technology to re-energize the lines once they're down, once they're de-energized, to kind of streamline the process of bringing everything back up and close a little bit of the gap of time between nothing's wrong and we are back online?
Right.
You kind of answered that question a little bit. But I'm very excited to hear about the undergrounding. That'll be, one step forward.
Yeah. It's a great question on the drone stuff. I think we're trying to get there. The challenge is, right, when we run into is how windy is it still potentially? How, these aren't, military style drones, right? These are, relatively small commercial operation drones. So I don't know what their capabilities are in wind conditions. But it's definitely something we're doing, I would say, during a proactive, let's go out and inspect poles and check their conditions and see how everything's looking. So hopefully we can get to that point, maybe use more powerful drones and blind conditions.
Installation of cameras that you can kind of, rather than having a human employee have to get in a truck and drive to the site to have eyes on it, virtual eyes can maybe, But besides that, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say how grateful I am for the employees of Xcel who are out there in the trucks, the lift trucks, and at 39 miles per hour or whatever, right under that threshold. We owe them a lot. I know they work into the night, and those are really hard, risky jobs. So I did want to say thank you to that. People, it's easy to be very frustrated with power outages, but keeping in mind the people working very hard to make sure we're back online. I want to acknowledge that. I also spent a lot of time with mayors associated with the Marshall Fire, so I definitely understand the risk and what is at stake and why these measures are needed. So I do appreciate that, absolutely. In the January timeframe, we had multiple outages, not just this one as a planned, unplanned, planned kind of situation, but one that was a car accident, one that was a tree limb, and several others that were either minor or only impacted like downtown. So I think that's where the giant frustration was, is that it didn't seem like one isolated incident. It seemed like a bunch happening all of a sudden. So what I can say is we were really hard on you last time you came here. And
You guys were easy.
And I'm not sorry for that, but what I can say is I've been incredibly impressed with your responsiveness and how you've changed that. We have since then reconciled our undergrounding costs to be able to recover more money even with additional residents that would be included and participate in those shared costs for undergrounding. We've been moving towards and with the urgency towards undergrounding. I've been very impressed with that. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for the update. And I know that we met on the substation item to make sure that they're aware of our growth expectations and what we have planned and on the outlook. So when they are considering the priority or considerations, where did that go? They know where Wellington will be at that point. So it was important for us to loop around there, and you followed up with that, and our staff is participating in that, and I really appreciate that as well. The other part I wanted to state is, if you are somebody who has a medical device, not only should you register and let Xcel know that, you also need to let the county know that, because in the case of a wildfire, for example, first responders, sheriff deputies will be coming to your household to try to help you and give you extra assistance, knowing that you have a medical condition and you need extra help getting out. So please update those contact details, not only with Xcel or all of your utility providers, but also with Larimer County. Speaking on the business item, since last year, several of the businesses have invested in full generator backup systems, which are a massive expense to businesses that are already struggling. What I might ask additionally, I've already asked a lot, but I'm going to keep asking for more, is that some type of grant or kind of shared expense cost for these businesses that are making those huge investments for backup power or for battery or whatever the case might be. That's where I could see a lot of benefits, because it's not just the business losing money, it's the employees there. It happened on 2 Fridays in a row, or like 2 Fridays in a month or something, which was the biggest day of the week for them.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I think Fort Collins was back online earlier, so everybody just went out to eat in Fort Collins, which always makes us sad because we want to shop and eat local, please, all of Wellington. So that's the only additional thing I might offer is that community engagement type piece is the support for businesses and commercial support. So
yeah, it's a great point, Mayor. We've heard that basically across the board from Boulder businesses who lost, huge incomes on basically the weekend before Christmas in December to obviously the January event up here. I would say I'm one guy, but I think what I would recommend for the town is putting, as we get ready to roll out the next wildfire mitigation plan, I would say there's going to be opportunities to engage with the Public Utilities Commission to write a letter expressing some of those concerns and some of the feedback that you guys have heard from your businesses in town, and maybe even getting, with CML or a coalition of other small communities in the area to talk about impacts to small business when these type of events happen. I think would be a powerful voice.
Okay.
I don't want to promise something that the company's not going to deliver on, because obviously we're not we're not a blank check. We're not the federal government. But we want to do our part and try to help folks because we know it's a big deal, especially when these happen in December and January, right? That's, peak holiday season. So we want to do our part. And I think as we lead up to that, I'll make sure you guys have the information on how to weigh in and engage.
I appreciate that very much. And again, I really appreciate how responsive you've been and even the changes we've made since the last time we've seen you. So I appreciate your partnership and thank you for being here again.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Hans.
It's good to see you guys.
Everybody good to proceed. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the items on the consent agenda?
August 11, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
and let the record note that Trustee Moyer is no longer online. Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. On to action items. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title for E1?
Resolution number 36-2026, adopting an economic development incentive policy.
And Liz Magargel, Business Development Manager, will present this item. Welcome.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and trustees. Tonight, I'm here to ask the board to approve Resolution 36-2026, adopting the economic development incentive policy. As you recall, we discussed the policy framework at your last meeting, so I'm going to keep my overview remarks brief, but I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. At its core, this policy gives the town a framework for considering economic development incentives while maintaining the flexibility to respond to individual projects and opportunities. Incentives would be considered case by case based on potential economic impact and public benefit of the project. Adoption of the policy does not create an entitlement to an incentive or establish a standing funding commitment. I also want to address some of the broader discussion that came out of the board's review of the framework. During the development of the policy, the board identified several additional economic development tools and strategies that may be very important to Wellington's long-term efforts. Staff agrees that those opportunities should continue to be explored. A downtown development authority, or DDA, could create a valuable long-term economic development and redevelopment tool for Wellington. Staff, generally, and myself, believe that there is value in further exploring the feasibility, geographic consideration, financial implication, and community support for a DDA. At the same time, DDA is its own potentially very powerful economic tool and different from the project-specific incentives addressed in this policy. It requires a separate statutory process and represents a broader district-based economic development strategy. So therefore, our recommendation is to evaluate it separately rather than identifying it as an incentive within this policy. Additionally, during the last discussion, other components of economic development, such as regulatory improvements, ongoing infrastructure improvements, site readiness, and business support programs, marketing and regional partnerships were identified. We agree that these must continue to be pursued and should be considered on their own merits. The incentive policy is one tool within a broader economic development approach. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed policy.
As an action item, these are questions for understanding. We'll wait for deliberation following public comment. Trustee Cannon.
No questions.
Trustee Barrett.
No questions. Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question for you, Ms. Magargel, on page 3, which is page 107 of the packet. I was just curious. I had voiced some opposition towards any type of reduced tap fees or anything like that. So I was just curious under the bullet point where you mentioned impact and capital investment fees. Does Does it, there's always some question about definitions as far as what impact fees are and that sort of thing. Does that include tap fees, or are we not including tap fees with that? I just want to be clear.
It could potentially. It doesn't take anything off the table for consideration. It is certainly something that we heard as would needing significant justification. And if that is something that a business believes would directly move their project forward and provide significant benefit, we would work with them on a justification. We would come up with a recommendation for the board to consider. We would include performance metrics. We would include clawbacks, everything that would reduce risk for the town. But in trying to keep things on the table that would allow for the discussions, it is kind of a broad allowance for those considerations.
Yeah, I understand. I think my question is more along the lines of, and I'm fine with a, partial deferment or that sort of thing. What I'm referring to specifically would be a reduced assessment in impact fees overall, because to me, that's off the table. So I just wanted to be clear.
Correct. And this, the deferment or structured payment is not intended to be a rebate or reduction or anything like that. So that one in particular, kind of worded differently than the other ones, is not intended to actually reduce, but mere, again, payment structure different.
That's just what I was looking for. Thank you.
Trustee Moore.
No questions. Thank you.
Trustee Blackstone.
Is it possible to get what? Oh, it's on. Is it possible to get kind of at the end of the year, just kind of a report of, the incentives that we've given, even at that administrative level, just so that we and residents can see that this is, either working, not even going to say the other side, that it's working. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, that's all I had.
Thank you. We'll open this to public comment. All right, closing public comment. I'm really excited that we're taking this on. I think this is a major milestone for us to really encourage us to follow our strategic plan of encouraging economic development within Wellington. I think it's essential. I am happy with, as it's shown based off of the couple of readings we've had at this point, of understanding the purpose, method, and potential within this incentive framework. Does anybody have any comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve resolution number 36-2026, adopting an economic development incentive policy.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you so much. Ms. Clerk, may I please have the title for E2?
First reading of ordinance number 11-2026, amending the International Building Code 2024 edition, the International Residential Code 2024 edition, the International Fire Code 2024 edition, and the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code.
Thank you. Cody Bird, Planning and Building Director, will present this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Cody Bird, Planning Director. Appreciate your time this evening. What I'm presenting to you tonight is a first reading, as was in the title. What that means is when we adopt a code by reference or amend a code by reference under state law, we're required to introduce it after public notice, do a first reading, and then public hearing on second reading, and then we can consider adoption. So that's procedurally what we're looking at here tonight. So the only action for tonight is to schedule a public hearing, which we would recommend to be September 8th, next board meeting. But to highlight some of the amendments that we're proposing to make, the town has recently adopted the 2024 International Code. I'll call it a suite. It's a series of code books that address commercial codes, residential codes, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, all the different components necessary to construct the building. When we adopted those codes, we often make local amendments to make the international code fit the local context. And one of the primary considerations that we work with is our local fire service provider, Wellington Fire Protection District. When they adopt the International Fire Code, the town adopts the same code so that we're on the same code cycle, the same local amendments, make sure that those teams work together. The local amendments that were adopted in the International Fire Code limited several of the occupant loads for commercial structures for assembly uses to a maximum of 50 occupants, which is pretty limiting. And the International Code allows up to 300 for certain assembly uses and 100 occupants for other assembly uses. So in recent considerations, Wellington Fire Protection District evaluated this topic and adopted a new local amendment to put it back in alignment with the International Code for 300 occupants or 100 in certain uses, which is consistent with the international codes. What we were proposing to do is to follow suit with our fire service provider and make sure that the town's adoption of the International Fire Code and the corresponding elements of the International Building Code, which have some overlap, we would like to align those to make sure that we're enforcing the same standards as the fire district is for automatic fire suppression systems or sprinkler systems. And as a bonus, we think this is a really beneficial change to help some of our smaller occupancy businesses to get beyond the 50 occupant limit that would enable different assembly uses to have larger gatherings than just that 50. I think it'll help some of our businesses on a question that has come up a couple of times in the past. So we are supportive of making this change. If there's any questions, I did invite Chief Todd Germain for any fire questions, and Mr. Kelly Dykstra is our building official to help answer any technical questions that you might have. The other components on the building code that we're considering tonight, we've adopted the 2024 International Residential Code. The residential code is what applies to single family and two family or duplex dwellings. With the residential code, it includes, the international code has a number of appendices, and the appendices are only applicable if you would specifically adopt them by reference. We have adopted several of those appendices, including radon mitigation, some others, but we had not adopted the accessory dwelling unit appendix, or appendix BC. We are proposing to do that now. The town of Wellington allows accessory dwelling units throughout town. And what we don't have is a code path that clearly identifies how you would construct those accessory dwelling units. So with the other considerations around housing affordability and deployment of ADUs, some of the grants that we're pursuing to help find funding to deploy ADUs, we feel it's important and necessary to adopt this appendix to have that in place when those times come. We do have some local amendments, mostly aligning definitions and some dimensional requirements with elements of our land use code to make sure those are consistent and not contradictory. The last piece that we're proposing in this amendment package is a clarification in the state of Colorado model electric ready and model solar ready code. The code that was required to be adopted by the state has a provision in it, section 102, and it's regarding waivers and variants, or waiver and variants. What we have found is that the process of applying that is quite cumbersome. It actually requires an appeal to the Board of Adjustments to enable consideration of a bunch of information that the developer would have to, or builder would have to submit to justify their position on the cost, which would only enable them to go down to 1% of the cost on the electric portion of the mechanical systems. So it's a pretty cumbersome process, and it just allows a what if. And we've, through researching this, we've found that most other northern Colorado municipalities have amended this out because it doesn't align with the intent of the code for the limited circumstances where it would apply. So our recommendation is to follow suit of our other northern Colorado communities to also amend the Colorado Model Electric and Solar Ready Code to remove section 102 for waiver and variance on that particular provision. Oh, there, sorry, I was one slide behind. So those are they're really pretty simple updates. Hopefully the redlined or track changes versions in your packet help illustrate the actual changes that we're proposing. They're pretty minor, so it makes the process seem a little cumbersome to go through all the procedural steps, but that's why we're here tonight, is to make sure that we're doing this in accordance with applicable notice and hearing laws. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I invited some of our technical subject matter experts if there's any questions that I can't answer.
Chief Jermaine, do you want to come up and just introduce yourself to the new board, please? Just in case we don't all know you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Trustees, good evening. Todd Germain, Wellington Fire Protection District Chief. I've been here for 2 years now this month. It's nice to see the new council here. Happy to answer any questions about this code change, this amendment change, if you'd like. I'll give you just a history of it or anything like.
Well, we'll see. Any questions for understanding from the board? There's none. Maybe out of the public comment.
Okay, very good.
Don't go too far.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on this item?
We just got one question. Probably, I'm sorry.
Please, sir, come up to the microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. Does any of this help the fact that we have no redundant water supply? And if we have a glitch at the water plant or at Lake 3 or a pipeline, that there's not going to be any water in the fire plugs? Does anybody care about that? You don't seem to be doing much.
Thank you, sir, for the comment. Are there any other public comment on this item? Sir, did you want to come up? Are you sure?
Wasn't that an important question?
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. We'll bring it back to the board. Are there any questions further? Mayor Pro Tem.
I do have some question. Chief Germain, if you can answer that really quickly regarding, obviously those are gravity fed, so there is in fact water in the distribution system. Anytime, if you'd like to.
Yeah, that's not my area.
Okay.
I would have to refer that to the town's water supply.
The hydrants are gravity fed, so they're in the event that the plant was not online for X reason, there would still be water in. Can you give us just to get that out of the way?
Yeah, I'm not the technical expert on the gravity and the pressure and flow that would be required to meet fire flow at hydrant plugs. But I think to Mr. Seaworth's comment regarding redundancy in the water supply, it's a little bit broader topic than just the building code construction requirements.
Yeah,
and it is something that we're aware of and working on, but that's not on the part of this hearing for this.
100%. It was more in regard to fire plugs specifically, not necessarily redundancy of water, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the technical specifications. There will be some residual flow for a period of time if there was a water disruption, but I don't know how long that would last for meeting a widespread emergency.
Yeah.
Sure.
An important topic, but out of scope for this action.
100%. Yeah. Aside from that, I'm fine with the changes to the IBC as well as the fire code and to be in line with the fire protection district as well as the ADU appendix for the residential code. I think most of my concern revolves around section 102. And this is one of those things why the General Assembly does this to us, I have no idea. But I was opposed to the model electric and solar ready code originally, but obviously it was required by the state. So here we are. That being the case, I understand why there would be some hesitancy from staff regarding administrative discretion for waivers and variances and that sort of thing. But I do want to make it clear that by removing section 102, it does make the model electric code and solar ready code, in fact, more restrictive by not offering a path for waivers and variances. So I'm kind of hung up on that personally. I would prefer us not to remove section 102 and to find some way to facilitate waivers and variances. I do understand the administrative burden, and I also understand the legal aspect of it, right? Whereas if I grant the waiver to X entity, what happens if I say yes or no to X other entity and those types of questions? So I fully understand that. I understand why other communities have removed that. But I also don't. I was never a fan of those codes in the first place, and I just don't really want to make it more restrictive. So that's the only point that I'm going to make here. So,
thank you, sir. Any other comments? Thank you guys for your presentation. My request from the board, and you may respond with so move, is to establish as a motion to establish September 8th, 2026 as the date for a public hearing to consider adoption of recommended amendments to the 2024 International Building Code, 2024 International Fire Code, 2024 International Residential Code, and the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daly.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. On to action item 3. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title? Thank you, sir.
Resolution number 35-2026, providing for a special election by the town of Wellington, Colorado, referring a ballot issue to the November 3rd, 2026 coordinated election.
Patty Garcia, Town Administrator, will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. So over the last couple of board meetings, the board passed resolutions for the notice of intent to coordinate on the November 3rd, 2026 election, and also approved an intergovernmental agreement with the county for the same purpose. The proposed ballot issue is a request for an additional 0.5% sales and use tax. The ballot issue presented estimates a $995,000 in revenue in the first full fiscal year, with future collections varying based on taxable activity. The town's 3% sales and use tax was approved by voters in 1998. That was 28 years ago. The population at that time was 2,200. The Wellington sales and use tax rate remains one of the lowest rates in the region. Wellington's population has increased over 93% since 2010. That has increased the need for law enforcement and related public safety services. The town has changed a lot since that time. There's additional residences, there's homes, there's businesses, roads, and schools, and a large middle school, high school that require public safety. As we've talked about, the long-term revenue goal for Wellington is related to economic development, and we are making efforts towards that. You saw in the presentation earlier tonight about the incentive policy, and that's something we're really excited about, and that's something we really want to focus on. The ballot issue is to provide a dedicated funding source for the ongoing LCSO contract. The proposed tax, as I mentioned, is 0.5 cent. On a $100 purchase, it would equate to an additional 50 cents. If passed, it would cover around 44% of the contract cost, leaving around $1,273,000 to still be supported by existing revenues. The primary purpose is to create that reoccurring long-term revenue source for law enforcement. This includes maintaining the town's current service level under its contract with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. The LCSO estimated 2027 budget is $2,392,000. There would be a slight reduction of $19,000 if the flock cameras were removed from Wellington. I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for understanding from the board? Yes, sir.
Hey, Ms. Garcia. I just wanted to double check again, because there may have been changes with other towns participating in the election. Is before there was with the fund that we had for an election, it was, I forget the exact numbers, but there was basically a $5,000 difference. Was it Berthoud that's now participating in it?
Yes.
With that, does that kind of make up that amount or limit that amount, or how does that?
It changes it. We have not seen the final numbers. We know the estimated cost for Berthoud was $31,000. That was included in their packet materials, but it didn't include the breakdown for all the other municipalities participating. So we're making an assumption, and this is based on history, that has reduced the amount that we would have to use to participate in the election.
Okay. I think that's an important just number.
Absolutely.
Coming out of the general fund.
Absolutely.
That was my only
Thank you.
question.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Back to the board for deliberation. Any comments? My general response to that, it's always cost sharing. So more participants, the less cost for everyone. So that is great news. All right, I will entertain a motion.
I want to do it, but I'm just really bad at remembering the right verbiage. Motion to pass?
So it would be a motion to approve resolution number 35, 2026, providing for a special election by the town of Wellington, Colorado, referring a ballot issue to the November 3rd, 2026 coordinated election.
As said, or second?
You can say so moved.
So moved.
There you
please.
go. You got it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
No.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
No.
Mayor Daly.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title for item 4?
Resolution number 37-2026, a resolution by the Town of Wellington Board of Trustees providing support for the ballot issue referred to the Wellington voters regarding a 0.5% sales and use tax increase for public safety on November 3rd, 2026.
All righty. So this is just related to the previous one and the approval by the board, correct? All right, so it's whether or not the board will consider this resolution and whether or not we're referring it to the ballot. So are there any questions on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this is actually a resolution by the Board of Trustees in support of the ballot question.
Oh, thank you. I
Correct.
misread it, so.
No worries, no worries. And this was something that, that we had talked about and wanted to, this is something that's normal and customary by a sitting board. Of course, it is not required for you to adopt this. It is your opportunity to show support or not for the proposed ballot question. And you would do that as a body. That's what the resolution is for.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. All right, are there any questions? Obviously, I had one, but they have been resolved since then. Any public comment? All right, the reason why I think this is really important is because we do acknowledge that the expense of public safety is something that is steadily increasing. We did a public survey or a community survey, and one of the main takeaways is that people in Wellington feel safe, and it still remains one of those places where people feel safe to be. What I want to make sure that we're communicating is that that doesn't come without expense. And those expenses are increasing, and as our community grows, those needs increase as well, which obviously extend the expenses as well. So I think it's in our best interest to be proactive and to make sure that we can burden the costs of making sure that Wellington maintains a place where people feel safe to live. Not to mention all the kids who are around town now because of the school being here, our needs for additional presence. We have seen a multitude of concerns of e-bikes and really just safety concerns that are mostly items that are resolved by law enforcement. And those issues are continuing to escalate as well. And I think if anything, we need more help and more public safety to improve that situation. So are there any other comments regarding the need or support for this item?
Madam,
Yes, please.
I do want to know, you make a good point when it comes to the middle school, high school being located in our town now. This has increased volume for traffic and a need just to make sure that everyone's commute is safe. I commute to Fort Collins every day, and in the last 10 years, it has increased significantly. And I think it's important to maintain safety on our roads, especially with the increased volume of students in our town now, not commuting to Fort Collins. They are in the heart of our community now, and they're staying here, and we're seeing it. And I think it's important to make sure that we are able to maintain that as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to be very clear about why I have voted no up on this until now. I have always, in the past, I have suggested that I would like to have seen the new board members get through at least one budget cycle before we go to actually refer this to the ballot. And really, it's just kind of to get everybody on the same page so that we are all kind of in solidarity about where this needs to go and that sort of thing. However, I do want to be very clear. I will be voting yes in support of this, and I will in fact be voting yes because I understand how important the town is in extremely dire financial situation. And in order for us to move this forward, I think that the entire board needs to in fact stand in solidarity regarding support for this, because I think all of us that are sitting up here understand that we just don't have a whole lot of opportunities for income. And unless we want to see a situation where I'm not going to go into what the consequences could be, but this is absolutely necessary. And in looking at it from that point of view, I will be voting yes. And in fact, when the ballot comes to my door, I will also be voting yes on it. So I just want to be clear about that.
Additional comments? Yes, please.
Trustee Mason, I love the idea of, the new board having that time to get acclimated. But I think if you listen to our residents, the time for action for us getting Wellington on the right course is now. I think that's a great thing, and maybe that's how it's been done in the past, but I want to move quickly on making sure that Wellington is in a better place, not in 4 years, but in 6 months or in a year. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I agree with you that we need to do this.
Trustee Moore.
Thank you. I also think that if we were to wait a year, just so that then we can all cohesively vote unanimous, the problems are not going to get smaller. They're only going to get bigger. I think the jumpstart that we need, the opportunity is here. So I am in support. Thank you.
Any other comments? I also want to note, and this has been in packets before, but in every budget I've been on this board for 6 years now, and I think the last 5 of them, Larimer County Sheriff's Office throughout our contracting process has requested additional staffing, saying that additional staffing is needed in order to patrol Wellington. And because of budgetary reasons, we have denied that request all those years. So when I say we're being proactive, let's keep in mind that our hope is that we will be able to be proactive, but we have already denied 5 years of additional staffing requests from Larimer County Sheriff Office. So I guess the final statement I want to say is that I really like that my kids run around the parks, are on Main Street all the time. They know their neighbors. Anybody will tell me if they're not acting right? I think it's a safe place where kids play in neighborhoods and they ride their bikes, preferably not through the parks, but they ride their bikes, they see their friends. It's the kind of place where you see a pile of bikes in somebody's front yard because that's where all the kids are. And I want our town to stay like that. And to stay like that, we need community policing, and we need to be able to make sure that we are in a safe place. And that's why it's so important for us to support this. And our number one duty of this board is to make sure that we are making sure our community is safe. And I think this is one of the most minimum things that we can do to work towards that goal. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. May I hear a motion?
I motion to approve resolution number 37-2026, a resolution by the Town of Wellington Board of Trustees providing support for the ballot issue referred to the Wellington voters regarding a 0.5% sales and use tax increase for public safety on November 3rd, 2026.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
No.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daly.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you so much. I now will briefly adjourn the Board of Trustees meeting and open up the Liquor License Authority Board. Ms. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Trustee Blackstone,
Yes, or here.
trustee Barrett,
Here.
trustee Cannon,
Here.
trustee Moore,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Daly.
Here.
Madam Mayor, the local liquor licensing authority has a quorum.
Okay, note that that was at 8:40 p.m. All right, Ms. Hannah Hill, Town Clerk, will you please present this item? Prior to doing that, sorry, Trustee
Just
Cannon, did you want to?
for the record, I do have a conflict of interest on this, so I will be recusing myself. I'll be stepping outside of the building during this portion. of
Thank
the
you, sir.
meeting. Thank you.
Appreciate for you repeating that for me. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, trustees. As the board knows, you act as a local liquor licensing authority, and the Wellington Municipal Code does allow the town clerk authority to administratively approve renewal applications for liquor licenses that are found to be in compliance and do not have any concerns from our internal review team. The reason that the application before you is coming to the authority as a renewal is as staff was processing the application from KLC to LLC doing business as Wellington Manor, which was submitted to staff for a renewal of their entertainment facility license on July 27th, 2026. Staff did find an area of the applicant being out of compliance, and therefore the finance department did not provide approval and did not offer recommendation for approval of the renewal. I do want to note that the applicant at the time of processing the renewal was current with their Wellington business license. The Wellington Fire Protection District did approve and provide recommendation for approval, and the applicant also passed their inspection from Larimer County Sheriff's Office, who also provided approval for the renewal. Staff did inform the applicant of the issue regarding their sales tax license on July 27th, 2026, and did request proof of payment to the Department of Revenue prior to moving forward with their renewal application. Since the time of publication from the for the board's packet, the applicant has provided proof of payment to the Department of Revenue to town staff. That information was provided to the finance department. They did review it, and while it is too close to the time of the payment being made for the finance department to pull a report from the state, the finance department has issued recommendation for approval. So I do not have a packet item to be amended in the packet. Sorry, my brain mixed all of those words around. Let me start that sentence over. The packet was not amended with the item that was provided to town staff simply because of the information provided in that document, but I do have a redacted version should the authority want to review it. All of that being said, at this time, staff would recommend approval for renewal for Wellington Manor. And I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here.
Does the applicant have anything to present? Okay. Does the board have any questions?
So you're saying you received payment, up until what date is that payment for? Do you know? Because based on the filing, I see June 30th, 2025. What is the most recent filing? Is it up to?
Thank you. I will refer to Mr. David for that.
The applicant is compliant. They are filed current. So they are filed, do file quarterly, and we have had provided proof of payment to get them current with the state.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? I'll open public comment. Any comment from the public on this item? Closing thoughts, anyone? I'll entertain a motion.
I will move to renew KLC2 LLC doing business as Wellington Manor's events, Wellington Manor Entertainment Facility license.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daly.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion does pass. Thank you.
Thank you much. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the local licensing authority and reconvene the regular meeting, the time being 8:45 p.m. Trustee Cannon, feel free to come back if you're nearby. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, sir.
Hold on, I got this one.
Okay. Let's move on to reports then. You can hear from over there. Is there a town attorney report?
I do not have a report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Miss Town Administrator?
Thank you. To follow up on some of the comments that were made with relation to the Xcel presentation, we have partnered with the Larimer County Emergency Management Group, and I have a flyer here that's also on our website, How to Prepare for Everything workshop. It is Wednesday, September 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. right here at the Leaper Center. So why should you attend? It's a way to prepare for disruptions rather than disasters. Your own personalized 72-hour kit, strengthen relationships with neighbors, and train the trainer opportunity. So this is what they're calling a community hub. And almost every community in Larimer County has a group of residents that serve as this community hub to help provide information out to residents when there's emergencies and things like this. This is Larimer County's attempt to see if there is support for something like that in Wellington. So I would really encourage you all to share the information. Like I said, it is posted out on social media on our Facebook page. Share that information out. Encourage your neighbors, your friends, family to attend this so that we can gauge if there is a support for this effort. I think it's something that would be great and valuable for Wellington, especially after listening to Hans Rodvik tonight and talking about the PSPS events and things like that. How can we better connect with our community, our neighbors, and our friends for events and help support each other? The second item I want to say, and Mr. Bird is still here. Mr. Bird has been awarded a Betcher Foundation Doers and Difference Makers Fellowship, which is really exciting. The fellowship curriculum emphasizes the multidimensional leadership model and includes more than 60 hours of in-person and virtual learning sessions facilitated by a diverse group of educators. This is a process that many, many people apply to be part of this fellowship. Many, many, many. And I think they select 15. I'm looking at Cody. We're not sure.
Seems around there.
Yeah, it's like 15 to 20, if I remember looking at the names. But so it's very selective. So it's really a big deal for Mr. Bird to be selected to participate in this. Really, it helps emphasize your leadership skills and things like that, but also helps you to network with others that are working on and dealing with some of the same challenges that you are in your work. So pretty excited about that. I think we continue to have people rise up and become better leaders and better for Wellington. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you to the Betcher Foundation for providing the opportunity, and just another example of award-winning, acknowledged, amazing people on our staff. So thank you. All right. on to the staff communications are included in the packet, including utilities report for July 2026, the NoCo Humane second quarter 2026 service report, the Board of Trustees planning calendar, the treasurer's report for June 2026, the report of expenses for June 2026. Are there any questions or comments on these items? Thank you. We'll go to board reports and we'll start at this end with Trustee Blackstone.
Yeah, on Monday, had a very fun meeting with Senators Kathy Kipp and Janice Marchman and Representatives Zara Zokai, Andrew Bosnecker, and Lori Garcia Sander. That was along with the Housing Catalyst CEO Julie Bruin, and it was a roundtable on the 2027 housing priorities, where I specifically shared the Wellington's housing needs. A lot of things from our housing needs assessment, and a case for restoring some of the housing authority funding tools. It was a really interesting meeting. We met at the Village of Impala in Fort Collins, and it was a kind of a conversation about what the representatives and senators are doing, kind of going into 2027, what we can do to potentially assist them, and vice versa. Very, very interesting to hear kind of what their priorities are, and be able to share what our needs are. I like being able to kind of talk about Wellington specifically, because our needs are very different than Fort Collins or Loveland, and some of those representatives, when I talk about our 42 units with our housing authority, it's specific, and I like being able to do that. So it's a great meeting.
I really appreciate you representing us on there. Thank you. Trustee Moore.
No reports at this time. Thank you.
Trustee Cannon.
No reports.
Trustee Barrett.
I have no board reports, but I will always remind everyone, please mark your calendars for September 19th. This is one of the biggest days of the year for Wellington. If you want to support your local community, we have the Wellington Star Foundation. They're putting on an amazing event. We're starting off the day with a 5K and 10K. You can walk, you can run, but signing up for this with your family is going to be a wonderful event. It has been relocated to Centennial Park this year, and I strongly encourage community participation. I and my family will be participating. There's going to be, I believe they added a new event, was it cornhole afterwards? But there is going to be Oktoberfest right afterwards as well. That is being hosted by the American Legion. But this foundation supports the American Legion, Kiwanis, and our food pantry. And then later in the evening is the grand event. It is the gala, raising funds for our food pantry. And it is an amazing date night. And there will be entertainment, music, and great stuff to bid on. We have some great donors, and I really, really encourage everyone to make a big day out of this. Please do. September 19th is one of the best days in Wellington.
Thank you much. Mayor Protem. Nothing. Okay. I did want to extend congratulations to two young folks in our community. I say young because they won 30 under 30 from NoCo Style magazine. It's Amos Baldwin and Holly Harrington. They're both business owners in our town, and they are incredibly emerging leaders in our town in addition to being business owners in our town. They have fantastic stories and wonderful contributions to our community. So I did want to extend a congratulations to them for representing Wellington well. It's 30 people for all of NoCo, and 2 of them are Wellington. So congratulations to us. Way to go, young folk. All right. The other thing I want to acknowledge is construction is full on disruptive, as expected construction would be for downtown. We knew this day would come. We were hoping it would come earlier, actually, but it is in full effect right now. So things that you will be seeing is some very limited traffic patterns. We've explained what's going on and communicated that online. You can join a Facebook group for updates. There's also text updates or on our website to know what's going on. Some other things that occurred this week that were sad, and I have to admit that during the tree lighting ceremony this last, holiday season, I gave a little ode to our trees downtown because it would be the last time that the trees as they stood would be lit for the season. Unfortunately, the trees that we have downtown have been failing for years. Actually, health hazards and hitting buildings and things. They're not the appropriate type of trees to line a street and to be part of a downtown environment. So those trees are coming down, and that has been experienced this week, which is a sad state because anytime you see a tree go down, it's sad. I want to make sure people know that over 30 new trees that are appropriate for and have been selected very carefully to make sure that they are the best for treescapes for Main Street and for a sidewalk have been chosen, and they will be replacing those trees later on in the construction process. A lot of thought, effort, and planning has gone in to make sure that this will be the most successful for as many years as possible and to reduce any safety hazards that our old trees were posing. I did say thank you to those trees. I actually shed a tear or two because I have a personal connection with trees personally. So, but if you have the opportunity to thank any of the final standing trees, thank them for their service to our town, and then help me in welcoming the new ones. Otherwise, please be safe. School started with weird traffic patterns and school kids going to school. It poses a lot of risk. I just hope that everybody's being very safe out there and looking forward to the future. And then above and beyond, our downtown businesses require a little extra support right now while they're going through this. It's slightly inconvenient to get to some of the businesses right now. But when I say slightly, I really mean just a little bit. Maybe you'll have to walk one extra block than normal. If you were to go somewhere in downtown Fort Collins, you would expect to walk multiple blocks to get to your destination. To support Wellington, I'm going to ask you to walk 1 or 2 blocks. Just that, just 1 or 2 blocks. And it'll get you where you need to go. It's worth the inconvenience. It's a slight inconvenience, but it supports your neighbors and your local businesses. Please continue to support Main Street as they're going through this. It's going to be better than ever. Eventually, we want to make sure all our businesses are still here to appreciate that after construction. That is all of my updates. We're going to adjourn this meeting. Oh, we're not going to adjourn this meeting. Excuse me. Ms. Clerk, can you please read the title for the next item for executive session?
For the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and/or instructing negotiators pursuant to 24-6-402 4E CRS, and for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to 24-6-402 4B CRS regarding negotiations related to NPIC and water resources, as required by CRS 24-6-402 2D.5, 2A, and 2E. The executive session proceedings will be electronically recorded, and the record will be preserved for 90 days through November 23rd, 2026.
Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Cannon?
Yes.
Trustee Barrett?
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone?
Yes.
Trustee Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason?
Yes.
Mayor Daley?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you for the public who are attending. We're now going to enter executive session. So members of the public in person will be asked to leave, and the online meeting will end. Thank you all for attending so much and being here.